Hello, everyone. Welcome to Module 9 Validation, Verification, and Learning. System that stop learning eventually stops protecting. We have three questions here that will change how you think about food safety. The first question is, if a regulator asked you right now to prove your most critical food safety control actually work, could you do that? Could you prove? And not just to show them a procedure or show them monitoring records, but to prove it that it actually worked. Cause and think about this. What could you show them? That's the first question. The second question, when was the last time your verification activity found something wrong in your system? If your answer is never or I can't remember, your verification isn't protecting you. It is giving you false confidence. Think about it. A system that never finds problem is not a rigorous system. It is a blind system. So when was the last time your verification activities found something wrong? The third question, if your equipment, suppliers, or staff changed in the last year, did your food safety system change with them? Because the reality is equipment ages, they get old. Suppliers switch always, and people leave, find better opportunities somewhere else, or for whatever reason. And processes also evolve. But most food safety systems stay frozen in time. And as you can see, the gap between what your documents say and what actually happens grows wider every single day. All right? The uncomfortable truth is most organizations believe they are protected just because they have procedures or records or they have audits. They believe they are protected. They can believe as much as they want, but belief is not a proof. All right? And being active, being busy, activities is not a protection. And compliance also, meeting the minimum, is not a safety. We will learn all that, and I will prove to you. I'll prove to you point by point. So today I will promise you this. By the end of this module, you will know exactly how to prove your controls actually work. You will know that. You will know exactly how to do that, how to prove your controls actually work through validation. And I will walk you step by step on how to implement it and with real life example. And also by the end of this module, you will know exactly how to verify that they are still working through verifications. You will know exactly how to verify your controls are still working with verifications. And you will know exactly how to detect problems before they become disasters. With continuous learning, we will design that together in your company. And as I said, I'm not going to teach you theory or concepts. I'm going to walk you step by step implementation that you can actually do tomorrow in your organization. Because I will give you real examples from farms, real examples from factories, from trucks, the logistics, and from stores. And I will give you real example from real kitchens around the world with real data. So the stakes, the difference, the difference between organizations that validate and verify and learn and between the organization that don't validate and don't verify and don't learn, the difference are the following. First is the difference between preventing outbreaks and causing outbreaks. It's the difference between protecting consumers and harming consumers. It's the difference between staying in business and getting out of business by shutting down. All right? That's the difference between organizations that validate, verify, and learn, and those who don't. So now I want you to ask yourself one more time. Can I prove? This is the question you can ask yourself. Can I prove my food safety system is protecting people right now? Can you prove it? If you hesitated, this module is for you. So let's go. I will have a quick highlight for the audience that this course is designed for. It's designed for our broader community. It's designed for primary production and manufacturing, including farmers and primary producers, food and ingredient manufacturers. It's designed for multinational food companies. And this course is designed for small scale processors too. And also is designed for distribution and service sectors, including cold storage and logistics providers, for importers and for exporters. It's designed for retailers and supermarkets. And this course is designed for food service and catering chains. This course is also designed for professional specialists, including food safety managers and quality assurance teams. It's designed for internal and third-party auditors. And this course is designed for food safety consultants and is designed for technical specialists. And also is designed for governance and oversight sector, including regulatory professionals, NGO and public health officials, and also is designed for supply chain risk managers and for senior leadership teams. The design principle of our universal course is that every module must make sense, both a small farm and a global corporation, because 100% we speak a universal language of food safety that is applicable universally. Let's explore the core question for the course. How does a system know it is still protecting people? This is our core question. How does a system know it is still protecting people? And this is not a philosophical question, okay? This is an operational question. And every food safety systems makes the claims that this temperature kills pathogens, this cleaning protocol removes allergens, this supplier meets our standards, and this process controls contamination. But claims are not proof, and at one moment, proof at one moment does not guarantee protection forever, right? So the answer requires three distinct but interconnected practices. In order to answer how does a system know it is still protecting people, you need three distinct but interconnected practices. And those are validation, verification, and continuous learning. And this is exactly what we are going to do today. Now, the false comfort is that you can say, we already, we are already validated, or we already validated this last year, last month. We already did the validation. That is a false comfort, all right? Because this is a common belief across food operations globally, and it's not just something specific to somebody. It's a common belief across food operations globally. And it sounds responsible. It sounds complete. That's why people adopt it. It's just we validated this because it sounds responsible and complete. But validation is not a single event that provides permanent protection. All right? Validation is not a single event that provides permanent protection. Validation is a moment of proof under a specific condition. That's what validation is. A moment of proof under a specific condition, and it's not, doesn't provide permanent protection. So when conditions change, which they will always do, all right? When conditions change, previous validation may no longer apply. The question is not whether you are validated once. The question is whether your validation is still reflects current reality. All right? The question is not whether you validated once. The question is whether your validation still reflects current reality. Now, the central truth is food safety systems do not fail suddenly. All right? This is the central truth. Food safety systems do not fail suddenly. All right? Just give me a second. Food safety systems do not fail suddenly. They erode gradually through a slow drift. Like we said, equipment ages, suppliers change, and staff turnover occurs, and also the process evolve over time. So the system that worked last year may not work today. All right? But the documents remains unchanged. That's the thing. So systems fail because conditions change while assumptions remain. All right? That's why the systems fail. Conditions change while assumptions remain the same. Now, we have three distinct functions here. All right? We have monitoring, we have verification, we have validations, and they are not same thing. Monitoring, verification, and validation, they are not the same thing. Let's go over them. First, we have the validation. Validation is proving before trusting. All right? You establish validation through scientific evidence or expert knowledge that the control measures will actually achieve its intended outcome. And the validation answer to the question of will these control actually work? So you conduct the validation beforehand, before the implementation. And then when you have the monitoring means watching in real time, observing critical control points or uh, PRP or OPRP during operations to detect when parameters move outside acceptable limits. And monitoring answers the question, is it working right now? And for verification is checking over time to confirm through scheduled activities that monitoring is accurate and controls are functioning as intended. And records reflect reality. Verifications answer to the question, is the system still reliable? All right. That's verification. So they are not the same. Below is a visual comparison with what we just explained. All right. Understanding the subtle difference is the key here to prevent food safety failure. In validation, like we said, you need a scientific testing and evidence before you implement. But the wrong way is when you assume that it will work and you guess the control and you implement it. For example, if you say like this chicken, I need to cook it for 15 minutes, and you guess the temperature maybe like on 60-degree Fahrenheit or 165-degree Fahrenheit, It's assuming that it will work. In food safety, that's the wrong way. You need scientific testing and evidence for validation. And when it comes to monitoring, you need to use control, calibrated measurements, for example. In case of that chicken cooking, okay? And you don't just need to say, we have audit records and we are monitoring. No, you need to use tested, calibrated uh, equipment or measurement equipment. Now, this is how you can tell the difference. In this decision flow here, first, you start by proving that control works, by asking question, is action proving controls prevents hazard before use, all right? And then you validate, you establish through scientific evidence. Then from there, you implement real-time monitoring with the question, is action happening in real time to control a hazard, all right? And then you watch CCP during the operations. Now, let me give you real world examples of cooking chicken that we just talked about at a restaurant, all right? So first, let's look at the validation. This is like for implementing validation, verification, and monitoring. So first you start with the validation for cooking chicken at the restaurant. Before the recipe is put into use, food safety expert determines and scientifically prove that cooking chicken to 165 degree Fahrenheit or at 74 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds is sufficient to kill common pathogens like salmonella. And this proof is established once before the implementation, before any kind of, implementation. You need validation. And once you implemented that, you move to monitoring. In our case of cooking chicken in the restaurants, the chef inserts a thermometer into each chicken breast during cooking. Ensure it reaches 165 degree Fahrenheit or 74 degree Celsius before serving. And this is done in real time for every batch. That's the monitoring. Once you established from validation, monitoring, thirdly, you need to verify. Verification here in our chicken cooking at the restaurants, a QA manager routinely checks the chef's thermometer calibration against a reference thermometer, reviewing temperature logs from the past weeks, and observes the cooking process to confirm proper procedures are followed. This ensures the monitoring system is reliable. All right? This is how you do the three. Now, the following are the questions to ask for implementation. This is your checklist. If you want to implement validation, you start with the question, is there scientific evidence that our control measures work? And how all processes been evaluated under worse have all, okay? So you have here four questions to ask in order to implement the validation. First question, is there a scientific evidence that our control measures work? Second question, have all processes been evaluated under worst case conditions to ensure they have achieved intended outcomes? And we will demonstrate how to implement under worst case condition together throughout this course. The third question to implement the validation, are new processes or equipment validated before use? And the fourth question, when was the last validation conducted? These four questions will guide you to implement a world-class validation. And we will do it together. But when you are implementing monitoring, you also have four questions in order to implement the best monitoring procedures in the world. You start with question one: what critical limits are being observed in real time? What critical limits that are being observed in real time? Second question: who is responsible for observing and recording these limits? Who? Third question: what corrective actions is taken if limits are exceeded? And the final question: are monitoring records complete and accurate? These are the questions that will always guide you to implement the robust, rigorous, best monitoring procedures. Then, when we come to validation, you also have four questions that will guide you to implement the verification. For verifications, you start with the question one: how often are monitoring activities checked for accuracy? How often? Second question: are control equipments, for example, thermometers, calibrated regularly? Thermometers, um, metal detectors, or any kind of control equipment, are they calibrated regularly? Third question: do records accurately reflect actual operations? And the final question to implement verification is verification done by someone independent from monitoring? This is very important, and we will demonstrate what do we mean by independent. So now, if you have picked up few points here, for example, in validation, to test it under the worst conditions, and in verifications, to be done by somebody independent from monitoring, okay, someone independent from operator, all right, and for monitoring records also need to be accurate and complete. Just give me a second. I think okay. Uh, Something is wrong here today with this presentation. Okay, and let me come here. All right, now let's start here. Why confusion is dangerous? All right, when these functions blur, the way we distinguish them now, but when they blur and confidence replaces the truth, that's confusion there. Why is it dangerous? Well, organizations begin to believe they are protecting simply because they are busy. You remember what we said earlier? Being busy doesn't mean the protection. Well, activity becomes confused with effectiveness. I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. Doesn't mean you are effective. And this connects directly to previous module. If you went through it, module 6, warning that evidence must be distinguished from beliefs. We need evidence to distinguish them from beliefs, right? So when verification become routine assurance rather than genuine inquiry, the system has already started to fail. When verification becomes routine assurance rather than genuine inquiry, the system has already started to fail. Now let's look at the confusion in action here. A real scenario showing what happened when functions blur and confusion take over. All right? Now, if we look at the confused approach, which is dangerous here, scenario here, a food processing plant. In the food processing plant, in this confused approach, first, they have operator is the one who monitors the temperature during the cooking, the operator. Secondly, they have the same operators verifies by checking their own records. Confused approach. Thirdly, no one ever validated if the cooking time temperature actually kill pathogens. And everyone is busy. Records look good and confidence is high. This is confused approach. Okay? The results here, they have false sense of security. But when tested in real life, in real conditions, the process was inadequate. The found failure and the recalls happened. This confused approach. Now let's look at clear approach, which is safe. Same scenario, food process plan. But here we have operators monitoring temperature in real time. That's okay. But they have quality manager is the one who verifies with independent testing weekly. And they have process authority is the one validating the cooking parameters annually. And here they have each function is separate, each function is independent, and each function is rigorous. All right? The results here, they have real protection, they have real, they have problems detected during verification before product is shipped. All right? This is the safe approach. Real protection and problem are detected before shipping. Now, here are the cause of confusion. In organization A, where the confused one, where they have the same person monitoring and verifies and never is never validated, and they have perfect records for 5 years, but outbreak occurs due to malfunctioning and confusion. And the cost there, 50 millions in recall, plus brand damage, plus criminal charges. Those are the costs of confusion. When you have the same monitoring and verification are done by the same person, you don't have validation, and you have perfect records that nobody checked and everybody look busy when the outbreak occur. This is the average cost, around $50 million recall, brand damage, criminal charges. But if you look at organization B, which has clear approach, a safer approach, when implemented correctly with separate functions and validated controls and verification, finds issues regularly. That means in such organizations, the problems are caught early. And the cost to implement such a rigorous system, it costs you somewhere around 5,000 USD to fix issues before they become disasters. We will elaborate with more details as we go along. This is an overview, but you can see clearly now. So how to avoid confusion? This is a practical checklist for you to avoid confusion. First, you need to ask the question regarding the control point. Has it been validated and proven to work with data, scientific data and testing? Secondly, who monitors this control point in real time watching? Work as done, not work as imagined. And who verifies this control point must be done by independent checking. And are there three functions done by different people? Is a must for effective monitoring and validation. Okay. Are there are all three documented separately? Validation, verification, and monitoring. Are they documented separately? They must be. If you can if you cannot answer all these questions clearly. That means you are confused and at risk, and that's what we are addressing here. This course will show you exactly how to remove that confusion and design a world-class course, a world-class system. If we look at the visual representation of the functions here, they must be separate, all right? The verification done by QA or supervisor. Validation must be done by technical authority. And monitoring should be done by operator, all separate. When they intertwine, it become a danger zone. When the monitoring interact with validation, and validation with verification, and verification with monitoring, that's when the danger happen. They must be separate. Now, like we said, when they overlap, they create a danger zone. Here, I will demonstrate with universal examples the same confusion across all sectors, how it looks like, an overview also, and we will dive deeper as we go along. In farms, the confusion looks like the farmer tests their own water and calls it verification. That's just a monitoring. In factory, production supervisors validates and monitors and verifies, all confused. And trucks, drivers check temperature and call it verification. That's not independent. And in stores, managers trust displays and never validates or verifies actual product temperatures. That's confusion. And in restaurants, cook checks their own food and call it verification, checking their own work. Confusion. All are dangerous and all are common and all are preventable. This is why we are here to prevent all that. When you do such practices, it makes it impossible to misunderstand why separation matters. All right. Now, let's reframe the validation here, which is the foundation of true confidence. Okay. Validation is the foundation of true confidence. Validation moves beyond mere beliefs to establish correct proof. It is a critical process that happens before trust is given, actively seeking to challenge assumptions and ensure effectiveness. That's the validation. That is the foundation of true confidence. Validation moves beyond mere beliefs to establish concrete proof. It is a critical process that happens before trust is given, actively seeking to challenge assumptions and ensure effectiveness. And without rigorous validation, activity can be mistaken for effectiveness, and organizational confidence can replace genuine truth without validation. Now, let's look at the traditional versus the best practices here. The traditional approach. If we look at the traditional approach, which is wrong, there is a reliance on outdated methods and assumptions lead to false security. You will hear them say like the equipment manual say it works, and we always done it this way, and the supplier validated this for us. That's what you will hear. All right, traditional approach. But when you look at the best practices, all right, the best practices, they have proactive, data-driven validation that ensures genuine efficacy and safety. That's the best practice, the right way. Proactive, driven validation that ensures genuine efficacy and safety. They test with their products, they test in their own equipment, and test under the worst condition. and document the actual data. Here is a step by step of how to validate correctly. All right. Step one, define the claim. Clearly state what you are trying to prove or verify. What specific control or process are you testing? Define the claim. Second step, identify worst case condition. Determine the most challenging parameters under which your process or controls must still be effective. And I will give you real world examples throughout the course. Third step, design the test. Develop a robust methodology for how you will gather data to prove or disprove your claim under these conditions. Design the test. Fourth step, collect data. Execute the test meticulously and record all relevant observations and measurements. Fifth step, analyze results. Interpret the collected data to determine if your claim is supported. Does it mean your defined criteria? Does it meet your defined criteria? Analyze the results. And the final step, which is sixth step, document and decide. Thoroughly document the entire process, the findings and conclusions. Based on the evidence, then make an informed decision. This is how you validate correctly. All right. Now let's look here the validation in practice. Universal examples. First, in a small farm, validating wash water temperature effectiveness for produce sanitation. All right. Validating wash water temperature effectiveness for produce sanitation. Validation in factory, they could be validating the cooking process reaches critical temperature for food safety. And we will implement those along the way, all right? I'm just giving you an overview. And in truck or in logistics, validating refrigeration until you, validating refrigeration units that are maintaining required temperature during transport. In restaurants or hotels, validating grill temperature consistently reach safe cooking heat. And in stores or supermarkets, validation display case temperature keeps perishable goods safe. If you work in one of those sectors, we are going to implement a vivid step by step, real from real uh, organizations. The validations questions that you need: does it work? Show me the proof and how to know. Okay. I think I'm having some problem with my presentation today. You see, it's skipping some slides. I don't know why. Now, this is the slide that we just finished. All right, that's good. Okay, now we can start with this. All right. Now let's look at when validation is required. All right. When do you need validation? Any change that you implement, it invalidates your assumption. Any change, any significant change in your system requires revalidation. You need to conduct revalidation when new product or formulations, revalidation when new supplier or ingredient source, revalidation with new process or equipment, and revalidation with new environment or facility, and uh, validation with significant scale change. All right? That's when you need the validation. All right? Now, most systems drift out of control through unvalidated change. The change seems minor. That's why systems drift out of controls, you know, and documentation is not updated and validation is skipped. And also, as a result, the protection erodes. Let me demonstrate with example here of a bakery validates that baking at 180 degrees Celsius for 12 minutes achieve pathogen destruction in their standard loaf. Okay. They later introduced a large artisan loaf with different density and moisture content. Now, the previous validation is no longer applies. So the new products require its own validation study. Okay. And this is not bureaucracy. This is the difference between assumption and protection. When you implement change, you need to revalidate. The new parameters are introduced. And those are what triggers the revalidations. You can ask these questions to see if you need revalidation. First, you ask, has anything changed? Okay, conduct assessment for significant changes, and then revalidate now if any change happened. Perform immediate revalidation, and also ask, what was the last validation? Check the validation date and continuous monitoring. Now you can do this from upside to the downside. You continue with the continuous monitoring, and you monitor and you verify regularly, and then you also check when was the last validation. You check available data and revalidate if you found, revalidate immediately if any change happened. All right. And again, you continue monitoring. Let me demonstrate with real examples of missed revalidation here. First, we have equipment change. The scenario here is a factory replaced oven heating elements in 2015. All right. A factory replaced oven heating elements in 2015. And the issue here, the never revalidated cooking process. The new elements had different heat distribution. The consequences here they faced, they discovered that during outbreak investigation in 2018, that they never revalidated. It was too late. And the cost here is 12 million in recall and 47 illnesses. That's the cause of missing revalidation. And we have one scenario happen in supplier change. All right. This was a restaurant that switched chicken supplier to larger breasts. And the issue they had, they kept the same cooking time from all validation. Now, since they have larger breasts, thicker products is equivalent to undercooked centers. That's what happened. That's the issue. So the consequences here, it led to foodborne illnesses, and it cost 30 23 illnesses and temporarily closure, and also 800,000 USD settlement. We have here also, in process change, we have a scenario where a farm increased production value. And the issue they had, the wash water system now is handling 3 times more than the original capacity. And they never revalidated the water treatment effectiveness. And the consequences here, the contamination occurred. And it caused them harvest destruction and 2.3 million USD loss. That's the cost of missing revalidation. Now, the following is the revalidation protocol. First, in day one, in the implementation, this is how you do it. Day one, identify the change. Pinpoint exactly what has been altered in your system. Then in day two, assess impact on controls. Determine how the change affected critical food safety controls. In day 3 to day 5, you can redesign revalidation study. Develop a robust plan to test the effectiveness of the control under new conditions. And in day 6 to day 10, you can conduct testing. Execute the study and collect all necessary data meticulously. And then in day 11 to day 12, now you can analyze the data, interpret findings to confirm the effectiveness of the control. All right? If you can confirm, if it's not confirmed, then repeat the testing. And then in day 13 to day 14, document and update. Record the results, did the procedures, and ensure documentation reflects current stage. Step 6, in day 15, now you can train the staff when it's successful. Educate all relevant personnel on updated procedures and findings. And then in day 8, in step 8, from day 16 onward, you can resume the operations. You can now operate with renewed confidence, knowing your system is validated, and avoid those costly mistakes of missing revalidation. Here is the change detection systems. You can implement system logs to proactively catch change that requires revalidation, and this can protect your organization. First, in equipment maintenance log, you need to create that to track any repairs, replacement, or modifications to machinery. You should have equipment log, okay? Equipment maintenance log. First, you need to have equipment maintenance log to track any repair, replacement, or modification to machinery. And you should have supplier change log where you can record new vendors and ingredients change or specifications alteration. And also have process log where you can document adjustments to speed, temperature, time, or other operational parameters. And also have product change log where you can note changes to product size, product formulation, packing, or ingredients. Finally, also you can have facility change log where you can record alteration to layout, to capacity, to utilities, or environmental conditions. Once you have all these logs, you can review monthly and ask, did anything change that affect food safety? If so, you can do the revalidation. Now let me demonstrate with sector-specific revalidation triggers. In farms, okay, those are the triggers for revalidation. If you have new water source, or if you introduce different irrigation system, or if you have changed harvest equipment, or if you have new storage facility, or if you have different sanitizers in farm, those are triggers for revalidation. For factories, if you have equipment replacement or repair, if you have line speed change, if you have product formulation change, and if you have new packing or capacity increases. All right. For the distribution sector, the revalidation triggers include new vehicles and different routes, longer routes, hotter seasons, and change loading patterns and refrigeration repairs and increased delivery stops. If you have increased stops during your delivery, those can trigger the revalidation. And when we come to retails, the triggers for revalidations include new display equipment, store remodel, change product mix, different suppliers, and seasonal temperature changes. In retails, you can revalidate. And for the restaurants, the triggers include new cooking equipment, menu change, different suppliers, portion size change, and new preparation methods. And we will demonstrate further. Those are the re-triggers, triggers for revalidation. All right. This is the revalidation decision matrix. Simple but effective. All right. So if you have the change that has low impact but happened recently, you can schedule the revalidation. If it's of high impact but the change is recent, you need to revalidate immediately. If you have all validation but it's a high impact, you need to revalidate soon. And if it's a low impact and all validation, you need to review and decide. Now, let's look at the verification reframing here. All right? Verification is your shield against self deception because verification is not just a tick box exercise. Verification is critical tool designed to challenge assumptions and uncover vulnerabilities in your system. It could be rigorous, revealing, and sometimes uncomfortable. That's the verification. If your verification activities never challenge your assumptions, they have become ritual rather than protection. Effective verification effectively seek out weaknesses and ensure robust controls. The effective verification actively seek out weaknesses and ensure robust controls. If your verification activities never challenge you anymore, if they never challenge your assumption, that means they have become rituals, not protection anymore. Now, let's look at weak verification versus strong verification. In weak verification, what must do, they have same person who monitors also and verifies and only checks when convenience and trusts display or gauge without independent testing and never finds any problems. That's weak. For a strong verification, which is best practices, you have independent person that verifies. You verify during worst conditions, not ideal condition, during busy times or hot days. And you use independent calibrated instruments and you regularly identify areas for improvement. Now, let's look at the verification protocol here, a step-by-step guide. All right. First, casual verification. Determine the frequency based on risk assessment. For example, should it be daily or weekly or monthly? Secondly, assign independent person. Ensure a different individual from operator conducts the verification. Thirdly, use calibrated instrument. Employ equipment that is independently calibrated and verified for accuracy. Then test the actual product or process. Don't just observe. Actively test and measure the critical parameters. Then document the findings. Record all results, observations, and any deviation clearly. And finally, trigger corrective actions. Implement immediate action if verification reveal non-compliance or drift. All right. Now let's look at the verification in action. All right. The temperature control across all sectors. Verification in farm, an independent person checks the cooler's internal temperature with a calibrated thermometer. In factories, QA tests the core temperature of baked product, not just relying on the oven display. In trucks or logistics cold chain, supervisor checks the actual product temperature inside the refrigerated truck during delivery. In stores, the manager uses a probe thermometer to verify the temperature of a display case's control. And in restaurants, a chef lead checks the cooked food temperature with an independent calibrated device. The red flag here sign that your verification is failing. First, if it never finds problem. Secondly, if the same person monitors and verifies. And thirdly, if only done when an auditor is coming. Fourth, if results are always perfect. Those are signs your verification is failing. This is the verification cycle for continuous improvement. First, you have weekly verification. So you have routine checks and you have data collections. Then you have data analysis to identify trends and potential drifts. Then you have process adjustments to implement corrective actions and preventive actions. Then also you should have documentation and review, update records and review effectiveness, and the cycle continues for continuous improvement. Weekly verification, data analysis, process adjustment, and documentation and reviews. Each activity should be designed to detect drift before it becomes a danger. All right, in this cycle, weekly verification, data analysis, process adjustment, and documentations. Each activity should be designed to detect drift before it becomes a danger, fostering a culture of continuous improvement and genuine protection. Now, let's look at when verifications fail. Verification that never surprised anyone has failed. I want you to consider the following warning signs. First, every audit finds the same comfortable results. Every audit, your GMPs, your monthly audit, your internal audit, the findings are just comfortable results. This is the first warning. Secondly, verification activities become predictable routines. Scheduled and informed and let people prepare and wait. That's the warning sign. Thirdly, no one is ever concerned by verification findings. Everything is ignored, unimportant. People are busy with production, volume, schedule. That's your third warning sign. Strong verifications programs are designed to surprise. Okay? You should surprise with your results, surprise with your conduct, your schedule for verification. That's a strong verification. They test assumptions. They look where problems might hide, the corners, the hard to reach areas. They ask questions that make people uncomfortable. That's the strong verifications. For the goodness of the food safety, for the protection of the consumers. This is the strong verification. When verification becomes predictable, it loses its power to protect. All right? Keep that in mind. When your verifications become predictable and comfortable, they become less protective to the consumers. The goal is not comfort, it is the truth. Here are the weak signs, the weak signals for, okay? First of all, strong systems learn early. You have to keep that in mind. In advanced food safety systems, they detect problems before they become incidents. And that's what we are teaching today, so that you can have advanced food safety systems. This is what happened in advanced food safety system. They pay attention to the following. First, they pay attention to trends in monitoring data. That means gradual change that indicates drift from optimal conditions. They pay attention to monitoring deviation. Small variations that don't trigger alarms but suggest underlying drift. And they pay attention to near misses, events that almost became problems but were caught just in time. They pay attention to that. Advanced food safety systems. And they pay attention to workarounds. When staff regularly bypass standard procedures, the system design has failed. They pay attention to this. Advanced food safety systems. That's what we are teaching you today, to have one. Because waiting for harm is not learning, it is a delay. Okay? Inspection and so delay. Organizations that miss signals versus organizations that catch them. Let's look at them. First, you have the missed signals here, the reactive organizations. This is the common belief. They say it is still within the limits, no action needed, or that's just a one time thing. Let it go, relax, or we will watch it. But they don't. They'll tell you we will correct it next time. Just leave it. We are busy now. Those are missed signals. Ignoring early warning signals lead to reactive crisis management. But if you look at organizations that catch signals, the proactive organizations, they will respond with similar to the following. They will they will watch the trend and say, it's trending up. We need to investigate now. Patterns detected. We need to find the root causes. All right. We have been sampling in this area and it shows a pattern of trending. We need to find the root causes, and they will. And they act before the limits are exceeded. These organizations are proactive, with proactive investigation and action prevent minor issues before becoming major incidences. Now, this is how to detect the weak signals. The practical step. First, plot your data. Don't just record it. Visualize trends over time. Secondly, look for trends. Identify gradual shifts, not just immediate exertions. Third, set investigation triggers. Define thresholds that prompt inquiry before critical limits are reached. Fourth, investigate patterns. focus on understanding why trends are occurring, not just compliance. Fifth, act on trends. Implement corrective actions proactively before problems fully materialize. Now let's look at weak signals in every sector you might identify and try to correct. Across industries, weak signals often go unnoticed until it's too late. And here are the different organizations that handle them. First, in farms, the water quality. The signal here, when water test results trending upward, is still safe but rising. That's a signal. What the most do? They will say it's still within the safe limits and no need to act. But the best practice is to investigate potential source of contamination or change in water treatment process. And I will show you along the way here where it happened and what they did. Secondly, in factory, metal detector. The signal here, when metal detectors rejections increase from 2 per month to 5 per month with no specific metal detected. All right. What must do here? They will say it's just a random, it's below the detection limit, the action limit. But the best practice is to check the machine calibration, raw material suppliers, or maintenance practices. Thirdly, in trucks or logistics, the temperature alarms, the signals here when temperature alarms become more frequent. Although the product is still safe, but the pattern are emerging here. What they must do, they will never, they will say it never went out of specs. Just reset the alarm. But the best practice is to inspect refrigeration units for wear, for door seals, or driver handling procedures. Inspection. Fourth, in store, the customer complaints, the signal here. When customer complains about office meals, for example, in products, although no illness yet, but if you have multiple mentions, what they must do here, they will say it's subjective, no food poisoning reports. But the best practice is to review stock rotation and storage conditions or supplier freshness. Then you have in restaurants, food waste. The signal here, when you have more food waste from overcooked items, the cook's compensating for something here. What the most will do, they will say cook are just being careful. It's fine. But the best practice is to check oven calibration and cooking timing or staff training on specific dishes. Those are signals you need to pay attention to. And here is the weak signal detection system. Implement a systematic approach to turn subtle indicators into actionable insights. All right. So, data collections, you can start from there, start with the data collection, gather monitoring and sensor readings, then conduct trend analysis, detect gradual shifts and patterns, then investigation triggers. All right, set investigation triggers and flag anomalies for reviews, and then conduct root cause identifications to determine underlying contributors. All right, this is the systematic approach to turn subtle indicators into actionable insights. Implementation tools here. This is the implementation tool, a simple trend charts, just simple trend charts that we demonstrated above. Use these conceptual charts to track your data. Okay, the yellow zones indicates where active investigation should begin, even before reaching the red zone. It's critical limit. Here now, for instance, the colors here are semi-uniform, but if you see The red zone is around 10 there, and you have the yellow zone is around 8, and the measured value is trending now is around 8. So if the measured value now trend above 8, trending toward the 9 and 10, you should investigate. Okay, here, right? So by plotting your data and defining clear investigation triggers, you can start detecting weak signals this week and prevent issues before they escalate. Simple but powerful. Use it. Now let's look at feedback loops. Feedback, if feedback does not change behavior, it does not exist. That's not a feedback. It must change behavior, okay? So true learning requires complete cycle. First, feedback leads to decisions, then decision leads to change, then change is observable. And when the change is observable, again, the feedback will lead to decisions, and decision will lead to change. This connects directly to our previous module 7 that focus on governance. Leaders must create the conditions where feedback can actually drive improvement. And without this cycle, you have data collections and learning. Example of a broken loop. Monthly verification reports shows increasing temperature deviations in cold storage. Reports are filed, no investigation occurs, and no corrective action is taken. That's a broken feedback loops. But then 6 months later, a product recall occurs due to temperature abuse. You see that? So when you have temperature deviation is increasing and you have the patterns and you have the trends to analyze and you have the triggers, you will take actions before such recalls happen. Now, the data existed in this example here, and the signal was clear, but feedback did not connect to decision-making authority. So learning could not occur here. That's the important thing. You could have the data, but you need actions. Now, this is how you can implement the feedback loops, to build feedback loops that actually work. Uh, you need to document and files and the problem is detected, then continuous improvement, and then you change the implementation. So if you have a broken feedback loops, you detect the problems, and people just file it away and they don't do any action. But in a learning organization, the world-class organizations, when the problem is detected, continuous improvement happen because the changes are implemented. Let's look at the broken feedback loops versus the working feedback loop. Here, in a broken feedback loop, which most organizations do, start with the problem detection, and then documentation, and then file it away, and nothing changed, and simple problem repeat and repeat until it become a disaster. All right? It's broken feedback loop. But in a working feedback loop that is best practice, when the problem are detected, the investigation is started immediately and the root causes are found and the system implement the change and the problems are eliminated and verification are effective. They verify that the change are effective. Here is a complete feedback cycle. This is the step by step with timeline of the feedback cycle implementation. Day 1, detect deviation or weak signals. Day 2 to day 3, investigate root causes, not just symptoms. And in day 6 to day 7, implement the changes. And in day 8 to day 30, monitor effectiveness. And from day 30 and day 30, verify problems that are eliminated. Okay? Just 30 days. Then share the learning across the organization so that it can be implemented somewhere else. Let me give you a real example of the same problem but different responses here. Okay, the scenario is a temperature deviation detected in cold storage. First, in the broken loop response are the following. They retrain the operator, and they blame the operator for the temperature deviation, and then they documented the retraining and they file the report. The results here, the same deviation happens next month. And the action is to retrain again. The outcome, the cycle repeats forever and the problem never solved. But if we look at working loop response, first, they start with investigation. Why did temperature deviate? And conducted root cause analysis, which revealed that refrigeration units are undersized for summer heat load. Thirdly, they conduct a system change. They upgraded the refrigeration capacity. Then they verify that they monitor for 30 days and they found out there were no more deviations. So they alert all the locations to check their capacity. They share the lesson learned. And the outcome, the problem eliminated permanently across the entire organization. That's the difference. Now let me show you feedback loops across all sectors. First, in farm example, the weak signal here, they have irrigation water quality trending down. And the investigation, they found out that new livestock operations upstream. System change, they install filtration and they increase testing. And then they verify the water quality now is stable. So they notify the neighboring farms to do the same. In factory example, the weak signal is metal detector rejection increased. And the investigation here, they found worn bearing shedding particles. So the system change that is implemented is to replace the bearing and update maintenance schedule. And the verifications, they verify that the rejection returned to the baseline. Then they check all the similar equipments and share the same learning and get rid of the problem. Another example in trucks or logistics, weak signal here is temperature alarm become more frequent. So they conducted the investigation and they discovered that the driver was overloading the vehicle. So they implemented the system change, the added load sensor, and retrained all the drivers. Then they verify and no more alarms. So they updated the loading procedures company-wide and shared the lesson learned. Now example in a store or supermarket, the weak signal here, they have customer complaints about the smell. The investigation found that the drain line partially was blocked. So the system change, they have enhanced cleaning protocol here. Then they verify and they found no more complaints. Then they shared and updated the cleaning standard for all their stores. They shared the lesson learned. Example in restaurants, the weak signal here is increased food waste from the overcooking. So they conducted an investigation and they found that there was an inconsistent chicken size and cooks compensating. So what they did, they conducted a system change of temperature-based cooking, not time-based. And then they verify, and now the waste is reduced and safety improved. Then they shared the learning, they roll out to all the locations. Let's look at the feedback loops here. This is just assessment you can conduct. and tested in your organization, then answer the following honestly for feedback loop self-assessment. All right, test your organization and answer honestly the following questions. One, do deviation triggers investigation, not just documentation? Two, do you find root causes, not just blame people? Three, do finding lead to system change? Four, do you verify change have worked? Five, do you share learnings across your organization? If you answered no to any questions, your feedback loops is broken and you can fix it with above examples. Now let's look at the learning organization model here. The level one is when they have documents only and no learning. That means they record what happened and file it away, and no investigation, no change, and then the problem repeats. You have a level two, our organization where they have fixed incident mentality with single loop. So what happened? To fix the immediate problems, they blame the individual, they retrain, and the problem may occur and the cycle continues. In level three, improving system, which have double looped learning that will lead to best practices, they have the following. They investigate the root causes, they change the systems, they verify the effectiveness, they share the learning, and the problems are eliminated. So, what is your organization's level here? You can assess that and conduct needed improvement. The following is an example of implementation templates. Use this from form for every deviations. You can comment on the video and I can send it to you, or you can design a similar one, simple one, but effective. First, implementation template start with the question one. What happened? Describe the deviation. Then, why did it happen? Use the 5 why analysis to find the root cause. Okay. And then, three, what system will change? And be careful there, not just to retrain people, and who is responsible for the change. That's number four. Number five, when will it be completed? Number six, how will you verify it works? And number six, who needs to know about this learning? All right. That's a simple but effective form. Start with what happened, why did it happen, then it will lead to system change and the owner and date, and you verify and share. This is the visual cycle of the feedback loop cycle. First, you start with the detection through monitoring and verification and weak signals. Then you investigate root cause analysis. Then you improve system change. Then you verify, you confirm the effectiveness. Then you share, you spread the learning. So tomorrow's action, take your last three deviations or near misses and do the following. For each one, ask, did we change a system or just blame a person? If you only blame people and retrain them, your feedback loops is broken. You start using the implementation template above for your next deviation, okay? And make it a system change, not a personal change. Now, let's look at why systems stop learning. Learning stops when attention stops. The following are structural problems, not individual fault failures. One, success breeds complacency. All right. That means when nothing goes wrong for extended period of time, the normalization of deviance, vigilance naturally declines, and the absence of incidents is mistaken for proof of safety. Two, pressure crowds reflection. That means production targets and cost pressure and time constraints make it difficult to pause and analyze weak signals. Number three, bad news is inconvenience. Okay? Organizational culture that punish the messenger ensure that the problems remain hidden until they become crisis. Culture, very important. We should use learning as a governance. System learns only when leaders decide patterns matter. When leaders decide that this pattern matter, that's when the system learn. Learning is not automatic. It requires permission and resources and attention. Okay, leaders decide what gets attention, of course, in the organizations, and leaders allocate time for analysis and reflections, and leaders create safety for raising concerns. Silence about emerging problems is often a leader outcome, not a staff failure. Okay? Here are the questions for the leaders in the audience. When was the last time verification findings changed our procedures? You could be a team leader, you could be an organizational leader, you uh, could be any type of leader. This question is for you. When was the last time verification findings changed your procedures? Secondly, do staff feel safe reporting problems before they become incidents? The near misses, the culture. Do staff feel safe? How much time you allocate for analyzing trends versus responding to crisis? And what happened when someone challenged an established practice, challenge the assumptions? What happened? The answers reveal whether the learning is structurally possible in your organization. Now let's look at the resilience versus fragility. Resilient systems expect to be wrong. All right? Resilient systems expect to be wrong. If you look at fragile systems, they assume stability, they resist change, and they treat deviation as anomalies, and they protect existing procedures, and they learn from failures. Those are fragile systems. But if we look at resilient systems, they design for uncertainty. They adapt continuously. They treat deviation as signals and they question procedures regularly. And they learn before failure. Those are the resilient systems. Resilience contains error before harm is spread. Okay? And this connects to our previous module 8 that focus on culture. Resilience is not a technical specification, it is a cultural capacity. Resilience. Organizations build resilience by doing the following. First, expecting uncertainty rather than assuming stability. Second, rewarding early detections of problems. Third, treating near misses as learning opportunities. Fourth, questioning procedures even when they seem to work. And fifth, investigate in adaptive capacity, not just compliance. That's how organization build resilience. Now let's look at the static versus adaptive systems. Static systems decay quietly. Documents remain unchanged in static systems, and reality changes continuously, and protection erode invisibly. That's how static systems decay quietly. If we look at adaptive systems, they close the gaps through the following. First, regular review cycle that update documentation to match reality. Secondly, scheduled revalidation when conditions change. Third, verification activities that test current effectiveness, not past assumptions. Fourth, feedback mechanisms that surface discrepancies quickly. And fifth, leadership commitment to continuous improvement over static compliance. That's how adaptive systems close the gaps. The question is not whether your system will drift, because it will. The question is whether you have designed mechanisms to detect and correct the drift before harm occurs. All right? The gap between what your documents say and what actually happens grows wider each day until an incident forces recognition. So you better have adaptive systems. Now let's look at complete implementation visual guides here. The complete system, how validation, verification, and learning work together. This is the integrated system work visual flow, and this is how world-class organization protect food safety. What we are going to go through now, the integrated systems, the complete system of how validations, verification, and learning work together. Phase one, you have validation, which proves it works. Validation establishes scientific evidence, like we said earlier, that a control measures eventually, that a control measure actually works before you implement it. That's the validation. It proved that it worked. Validation establishes scientific evidence that a control measure actually works before you implement it. All right? So, first, define your claim. Our cooking process kills salmonella, or our refrigeration keeps products below 4 degrees Celsius. Then, second, design worst case test. Worst case test. Use the thickest product, coldest temperature, fastest speed, maximum load scenario to challenge the control. That's what you need to do. Design the worst case test. Thirdly, collect the data. Use calibrated instruments. Test multiple times and meticulously document all the findings. Fourth, make decisions. For example, pass means that the control is adequate and you implement it. And if it fails, that means the control is inadequate and you redesign again. And the results, number five, you now have proof the controls works effectively. All right? The phase two is monitoring, observing in real time. Monitoring is the ongoing observation and measurement of critical parameters to ensure they remain within established limits. That's the monitoring. So first, you start with who? Who monitor? The operator, of course, and the sensors, the frontline staff, and automated systems and IoT sensors. Secondly, when does the monitor happen? Has to be continuous or scheduled. Real-time data streams, and periodic checks. And how does the monitor happen? Through logs and alerts, digital dashboards, physical logbooks, and automated alarms. Fourth, example of them of the monitoring, you have for example cold storage logs, okay, like fridge temperature recorded every 4 hours by staff. Now, then you move to phase three, the verification. You confirm the effectiveness. Okay? Verification activities confirm that the monitoring and control measures are working as intended and that the system is achieving its objectives. That is the verification. How do you implement it? First, you start with who? Who verifies? Quality assurance, QA team, supervisors, and external auditors. When does the verification happen? That's second. First question, who? The second question, when? Is it periodic and random or both? Weekly, monthly, or unannounced checks? Depend on the risk. And then thirdly, determine how does the verification happen? Through audits or through tests, through record reviews, calibration checks, or challenge tests? How? Determine that. Example here for the verification, you have calibration check. Thermometer calibration verifies monthly. That's an example. All right. Now then you have phase four, the learning, driving continuous improvement. Learning involves analyzing data, identifying trends, investigating deviations, and implementing corrective actions to strengthen the system. All right. So you start with who? Who learn? You have management and team, including the leadership, the cross-functional teams, and the process owners. We learn from the lesson shared. And when does the learning happen? Incident driven and proactive. You can have both. You can learn from both. After the deviation and during regular performance reviews and from the trends, you can learn. That you determine how through root cause analysis, corrective and preventive actions, CAPA, and training updates. And then you have examples. Here, it will be the protocol revision. For example, adjusting temperature limits based on new data or incident. You learn, you improve. All right? Now, let's look at the complete cycle dynamics here. Complete cycle, a dynamic system for resilience. The following circular diagram illustrates how validation, monitoring, verification, and learning continuously reinforce each other, ensuring adaptability and robust system performance. You have monitoring daily, verification weekly, and then you have learning monthly and validations maybe yearly. All right. Now let's look at real world example. Let me demonstrate with real world example the temperature control in cold storage. Let's see how these four phases apply to maintain optimal conditions in cold storage facilities. First, validation, the system design. Establish critical temperature range between from 0 to 4 degrees Celsius. For perishable goods, define sensor placement and set monitoring frequency. All right? First, system design. Establish critical temperature range from 0 to 4 degrees Celsius for perishable goods and define sensor placement and set monitoring frequency. Secondly, monitor, daily check. Automated sensors continuously log temperatures and staff manually verify readings twice daily, and alert triggers if limits are breached. Thirdly, verification, audit, and calibration. UA performs weekly audits for temperature logs, verifies sensor calibrations monthly, and conducts annual mock product recall. Fourth, the learning, continuous improvement. Review incident reports of temperature excursions, identify root causes, for example, faulty door seals, and update maintenance protocols and retrain staff. That's how these four interact together. Okay? Now, what this looks like in every sector. Let's do it in every sector, okay? The principle of validation, monitoring, verification, and learning are universal across industries. If we look at farm, for example, pesticide application protocols and soil moisture monitoring and harvest quality checks and crop yield analysis. If we look at factories, they have machine calibration, production line check, final product inspection, and process optimization. And if you see at the trucks or logistics, you have route planning, GPS tracking, vehicle safety inspection, and fuel efficiency reviews. And if we look at the stores, they have shelf life management, inventory counts, customer satisfaction surveys, sales trend analysis. And if we look at restaurants, they have recipe standardization, food temperature checks, hygiene audits, customer feedback loops. Those are universal applications. All right? Let's look at the separation principles here, prayer roles for robust system. For an integrated system to function effectively, there must be a clear separation of audit of duties between different functions. Okay? You have execution and monitoring, and you have design and validation, and you have oversight, verification, and learning. Okay? The operational controls, you have execution monitoring with design and validations, and then you have between design and validations and oversight, verification, and learning, that's the validated procedures, and from oversight, verification, and learning to execution and monitoring, you have performance insight, and they all meet on continuous food safety assurance when they work together. All right? Let me see here. Uh, I have problem with my presentation today. Something is very critical here. Now, let's look at the implementation checks. Okay. To implement, this is the implementation checklist. Get started today. First, for leadership, commit to continuous improvement. Collect resources, foster a culture of transparency. Secondly, for teams, understand roles, adhere to protocols, and report deviation promptly, and participate in reviews. And for the documentation, okay, keep procedures current, ensure accessibility and version control for all the documents. And for technology, uh, leverage automation, integrate data, and use analytics for insights and predictive maintenance. All right. Here is a visual summary. The four questions for a resilient system. First, let me do something here. All right. Um, First, is it designed right? Have we validated our processes to meet objectives? Secondly, is it being done right? Are we monitoring parameters correctly in real time? Third, are we sure it's right? Okay, are we verifying effectiveness through audit and test? Fourth, how do we do how do we do it better? Are we learning and improving? So tomorrow's action is start small and iterate fast. Don't aim for perfection immediately. Pick one critical process, apply the validation and monitoring and verification and learning cycle, and expand from there. Continuous improvement is a journey, okay? Now let's look at the implementation framework, all right? From concept to practice, let's implement together. The following examples shows how validation, verification, and learning work together in real operations. Each sector, we are going to implement in each sector as they face unique challenges, and each requires adapted approach, but the underlying logics remain universal. So those are universal practices you can implement anywhere around the world. All right. So those are not theoretical exercise, as you can see, you will see now. These are patterns you can implement tomorrow in your organization. All right. Let's start with sector one: primary production and farming. The primary production validations in real field. Validation challenge here: does my irrigation water actually meet safety standards? Now this is let's conduct a step-by-step validation example. For primary production, validation in the field, and the validation challenge: does my irrigation water actually meet safety standards? Step-by-step validation example. Step one, define the claim. For example, our irrigation water is safe for leafy green production. That's your claim. You need to claim that first. That's the first step to define it. That your irrigation water is safe for leafy green production. And the critical limits here is E. coli must be under 126 CFU per 100 milliliter. Second step, gather evidences. The way you gather the evidences are the following. First, test water source 5 times over 2 weeks. Secondly, test at different time of the day. Third, test after rainfall events. Fourth, document flow rates and pressure. Step 3, challenge the assumptions. And this is how you challenge the assumptions. One, what if upstream contamination occurs? Secondly, what if seasonal change affects quality? Third, what if equipment fail? Challenge the assumption. Step 4, define, document, and decide. If all tests pass, then the system is validated. But if any test fails, you need to redesign is needed, such as filtration and UV treatments and alternative sources. All right. You need to document and decide. If all steps pass, that means the system is validated. If any test fail, you need to redesign, such as installing filtration, UV treatment, and alternative sources to be considered. Real example: a lettuce farm in California discovered their well water failed validation during a spring runoff. So they installed UV treatment and revalidated successfully. Tomorrow's action: test your water source this week and don't assume last year's results still apply. Follow the above steps and test your water source this week. Let's look at the verification example in primary production. The verification here is catching drift before disaster. Verification question: is our harvest sanitation still working as designed? Here is the following is the 30-day verification cycle. First, step 1. In week 1, environmental monitoring. You can conduct it as following. First, swap harvest bins before use. Secondly, test 3 random locations. Third, compare to baseline from validation. And fourth, the red flag is if any positive pathogens detected. Second step, in week 2, process observations, which happen as following. First, watch harvest crew sanitize equipment. Secondly, time the contact time for sanitizer. Third, measure sanitizer concentration. The red flag you are looking for here, such as shortcuts, rushing, and inconsistent application. Third, this third step in week 3, record record reviews. And you can do the record reviews as following. First, check sanitization logs for gaps. Secondly, look for patterns. For example, the same person is always signing the logs. Thirdly, verify temperature of wash water. The red flags you are looking for here. If you found perfect records, that means too perfect, it means it's not real. Fourth, the fourth step in week 4 is to conduct a product testing by doing the following. First, sample finished product. Secondly, send it to lab for pathogens screening. Thirdly, compare to historical data. And the red flag you are looking for here is increasing trends, and even if it's below the limits, you are just looking for upside trend. So what this parameter discovers when they conducted there, a berry farm in Oregon found that sanitizer concentration dropped every afternoon. The investigation reveals that the mixing tank heated up in the sun, causing evaporation and concentration drift. So they moved the tank to shaded area and added hourly check. You can use the following self-assessment tools. Do you verify at least monthly? Do you ever find problems? If never, that means your verification is too weak. And do you do findings lead to corrective actions? And are verification tasks assigned to someone other than operator? Tomorrow's action is schedule your first verification check for the next week. Pick one critical control and verify that it's still working. Now let's move to the second sector, which is food manufacturing. In manufacturing, we will validate the thermal processor. Validation challenge here: does our cooking process actually kill pathogens throughout the product? Let me demonstrate with real world validation protocol. The scenario: a ready meat manufacturer Cooked chicken breast portion, cooked chicken breast portions to 165-degree Fahrenheit for food safety. First, step one, in this scenario, map the uncertainty as following. Oven has 12 zones, okay? And product thickness varies by 10 to 15%, and conveyor speed can fluctuate, and cold spot may exist. All right? Secondly, the second step is to conduct the worst case testing. Test the hardest condition by doing the following. Use the thickest product pieces, the coldest oven zone, use data logger in all 12 zones, and implement fastest conveyor speed, and load the oven to the maximum capacity, and use the coldest incoming product temperature. Step 3, measure what matters. Insert thermocouples, uh, thermocouples into geometric center of the product. Run 3 consecutive productions batches. Record time temperature profile, and calculate lethality with F value, not just adapting the temperature. Step 4, build in safety margin. If validation shows 165-degree Fahrenheit achieved in 12 minutes, set operational limits to 14 minutes. Safety buffer will be 2 minutes, and this accounts for normal variation. So when that happened, they discovered the following. All right? When above scenario implemented, the following is the discovery. During validation, the manufacturer discovered that chicken pieces placed in the back side of the oven uh, of zone 3 consistently reach only 162 degree Fahrenheit after 12 minutes. That is 3 degree below the target. The issue here, a partially blocked air circulation vent in the zone. So they repaired the vent, the ventilation, and revalidated and adjusted their process time to 14 minutes with a 2-minute safety margin. And this prevented potential undercooked of approximately of 8% of their dairy production. Self-assessment checklist here. Have you validated under worse conditions? Do you know whether your cold spots exist or not, and where are they? Is your safety margin documented and justified? And when did you last revalidate? This should be annually or after any change. So tomorrow's action, identify your worst critical thermal process, map the temperature distributions, and find your cold spot. Now let's implement manufacturing verification in action. Verification, the weekly reality check. The verification question here is, our metal detector is still catching contamination. Is our metal detector still catching contamination? The weekly verification protocol here, first you have Monday morning ritual. Every week before production starts, the QA team runs test pieces through the metal detector. The test kits contains the following: ferrous metal test piece of 2.0 mm, non-ferrous metal test piece of 2.5 mm, and stainless steel test piece of 3.0 mm. All are embedded in actual product metrics. And the process is the following. They run each test. They run each test piece through 3 times. Detector must reject all pieces all the time. Document results with date, time, and operator signature. And if any piece pass through, that means stop the production. So what one plant discovered with above test, a bakery in Germany ran their weekly verification and found the detector missed the stainless steel test piece once out of 3 passes. The investigation reveals the following. Sensitivity had drifted down 15% over 6 months, and that gradual electronic component degradation, they have detected that too. And daily checks were just running empty conveyors, not actual testing, and no one noticed because it happened slowly. The following were the immediate actions. They recalibrated the detector, quarantined 3 days of production, enhanced verification to include sensitivity measurements, and added monthly third-party verification. And the cost of catching it early are the following. 3 days of products that have been on hold is valued at 12,000 euros. Recalibration costs 800 euros, and the total is 12,800 euros. But the cost, if they did not catch this early, would be the following. Potential recall of 500,000 euros and brand damage that we could not calculate, incalculable, and regulatory actions would have been a possible shutdown. So with verifications, a factory with verification implement weekly checks, and definitely they will catch minor issues. But when there is no verifications, the, they will have major recalls because they will not detect the issues. Now the assessment, use the following for self-assessment. Do you test with actual contaminants, not just empty runs? Is verification done by someone other than the operator? Do you document every verification? And do you have a clear fail protocol? Tomorrow's action, test your metal detector X-ray, or X-ray or check waiter with actual test pieces this week, and don't just watch it run empty. Use actual contaminants. Now let's look at the third sector, the distribution and logistics. The cold chain validation, proving your transports work. Validation challenge here. Does our refrigerated transport actually maintain safe temperature during real delivery routes? The following is the distribution validation study. The scenario, distributor delivers fresh seafood to 15 restaurants across the city. They claims that our product stays below 4 degrees Celsius throughout delivery. To test that, step 1, define worst case route by doing the following. The longest routes with 6 hours, for example, and hottest season during the summer, and maximum door opening, 15 stops, and with the fullest load to impact the air circulation. Secondly, step two, instrument uh, instrument the load by doing the following. Place data logger in 6 locations, one in near the door in warmest spot, one in back corner in coldest spot, one on top of the load, second at the bottom of the load, one at the bottom of the load, and one in the middle of the load, and one inside actual products between fish fillets. Step three, run the test. So complete 3 fully delivery routes, record combined temperature, document door opening times, and measure product temperature at each stop. Step 4, analyze the data. Map temperature excursions, identify critical points, calculate time above 4 degrees Celsius, and determine if safety margins exist. So a company conducted that and they discovered the following. A distributor in Singapore found that product near the door reached 7 degrees Celsius during the 4th and the 5th stop. That's 30 minutes above the safe temperature. The root causes, they found the following. The door gasket was worn on one side. Driver kept door opens while checking invoices for the average of 3 minutes per stop, and no pre-cooling of products before loading. The solutions that are implemented are the following. The replace door gasket, the trained drivers to close doors first, then check the paperwork, and the required product to be pre-chilled to 2 degrees Celsius before loading to allow buffer for warming, and then they revalidate it with improvement. The results after the implementation, the product never exceeded 4 degrees Celsius on subsequent validation runs. The cost benefit reality here, validation study cost them $2,500 and prevented losses from the spoilage that is valued at $45,000 per year. So the avoided foodborne illness incident also was uh, was the benefit, which is priceless. Now, here is a self-assessment for distributors. Do the following. First, have you validated your longest and your hardest route? Secondly, do you know your vehicle's cold spot and hard spots? Third, have you tested with doors opening at every stop? Fourth, when did your last validation happen? Do you revalidate annually or after vehicle maintenance? These questions are for self-assessment to implement the improvement. So tomorrow's action, put a data logger in your next delivery, see what actually happened to temperature during the real operations. Now in sector 4, the retail and food service. For retail validation at the point of sale. The validation challenge here are our display cases actually keeping food safe at all day long? Here is a daily verification routine. The scenario, a supermarket deli displayed prepared salads, sliced meats, and ready to eat meals. The display case shows 3 degrees Celsius on the digital readout. Now, the morning verification before the opening, check display thermometer reading 3 degrees Celsius. Use calibrated probe thermometer to check actual product temperature in 3 locations. In front of the case, the warmest area, the found was at 4 degrees Celsius. The middle, 3 degrees Celsius. And the back, the coldest area, 2 degrees Celsius. Check case is not overloaded. Air must circulate, and verify sneeze guards are in place and document findings. The midday verifications, the peak shopping hours, happen as following. Repeat product temperature checks. Observe customer behaviors. For example, are they leaving case open? And check for ice built up, which will indicate that the temperature is cycling. And verify staff are rotating product properly. When there are few companies who did this test, and one store discovered the following. A grocery store in Australia found that their fresh salad case showed 3 degrees Celsius on the display, but actual product temperature was 8 degrees Celsius during afternoon rush. Their investigation revealed the following. Display thermometer measured air temperature, not the product, and case was overload, which blocked the air circulation, and customer left door open while deciding. An afternoon sun hit the case through the window, and compressor didn't keep up during hot hours. The immediate actions that are implemented are the following. They reduced product loads by 30%, installed UV blocking film on windows, added please close the door signage, upgraded to larger compressor, and changed verification to measure product, not the air. The learning moments, the store manager said, we trusted the display for 5 years and we never actually checked the food temperature. We were measuring the wrong thing. All right. Now, the following for self assessment for the retailers. Do the following for self assessment. First, do you measure product temperature, not just air? Do you verify during your busiest hours? Do you check multiple locations in each case? Do you have a plan when verification fails? Now, the common retail verification failures happen because of the following. Only check in the morning and the mid-afternoon drift. Trusting the display thermometers, which measure air, not food. And never checking during busy periods when problems actually occur. And same person stacks and verifies. That's not an independent check. So tomorrow's action for you, take a calibrated thermometer, check your coldest display case during your busiest hours, and measure the actual product, not the air, and you might be surprised. Now let's look at the food service, restaurants and kitchen validation to your cook time. Validation challenge here. Does our grill actually cook chicken safely in the time we think it does? The chicken validation study as the following. The scenario, a restaurant chain grilled chicken breasts. The standard operating procedure says grill for 6 minutes per side at medium high heat. The assumption here, this achieves 165 degree Fahrenheit or 74 degrees Celsius internal temperature. But has anyone actually proved it? Step 1. test under real condition. Use actual chicken from your supplier with various sizes, and use your actual grill, not a lab, and use your actual cook because the skill also varies, and test during busy dinner service because grill crowded and heat fluctuates. Second step, measure what matters. Insert probe thermometers into thickest part, test 10 chicken breasts, record actual internal temperature after 6 minutes per side, and document grill surface temperature. Third step, analyze the results. What they found at the restaurant in Texas when they did that, 3 out of 10 breasts reached only 155 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not safe, and the thicker pieces needed 8 minutes per side, and grill temperature dropped when crowded, and different cooks use different medium high settings. Step 4, redesign the process. The new procedures in that case, cook until internal temperature reach 165 degree Fahrenheit. The cooking should be outcome based, not time based. Then provide every cook with a prop thermometer also, and check every fifth chicken breast. If grill is crowded, reduce load or increase the time. Revalidation results, when that happened, 10 out of 10 breaths reached 165 degree Fahrenheit or higher, and the average time is 7 minutes per side, not 6, and the process now reliable across all the cooks. The critical insight here, the head chef say, we train everyone to cook for 6 minutes because that's what their recipe say. We never questioned if 6 minutes was actually enough, and we were following procedure that was never validated. This is the visual flow of the same uh, demonstration. Now, the real consequences here, a similar restaurant that never validated in the same chain had a foodborne illness outbreak traced to undercooked chicken. They were following the same 6 minutes rules, and it cost them $2.3 million in legal settlement and temporary closure and brand damage. The validation study for this restaurant that avoided such failure, it cost them only $500 and one afternoon, $500 and one afternoon. Now here is the self-assessment for the food service industry. 1. Have you validated your cook times with actual temperature measurement? Do you account for product size variation? Do you verify during busy service, not just slow periods? And do all cooks know the target temperature, not just the time? Tomorrow's action, pick your highest risk item, chicken or ground beef or eggs, and cook it according to your procedures. Measure the internal temperature. Is it actually safe? And from there, you can decide. Let's look at regulatory and inspection. For regulators, verification of industry system. The regulators' challenge here, how do I verify that a facility's food safety system actually works and not just on paper? The following is inspection verification framework. The traditional inspection approach goes as following. First, check if HACCP plan exists. Secondly, review monitoring records. Third, verify critical limits are documented. And fourth, confirm corrective actions are recorded. The problem here, this verifies paperwork, not protection. Advanced verification approach is to ask the question that reveal. First question, show me your validation study for this critical control point. What is your What are you looking for here? You are looking for actual data, not assumptions. You are looking for worst case testing, and you are looking for rates and data, not 10 years old, and you are looking for evidence of revalidation after challenge. The red flags that you can come across with here with this first question, if you hear somebody telling you that we always done it this way, or not documentation of validation, or validation is done by equipment suppliers, that's a conflict of interest, or the validation is older than the equipment. Those are the red flags. The second question, so you can ask, walk me through what happened when monitoring shows a deviation. And what you are looking for here, you are looking for immediate response protocol, you are looking for product disposition decisions, you are looking for root cause investigations, and you are looking for system improvement, not just fixing the one incident. The red flag you can come across here includes somebody will tell you that never happened here. That means the verification is 2 weeks, or the deviation is explained away and not investigated, or no evidence of system change after deviation and the same deviation recurring. Third question you could ask, show me an example where verification found a problem. And what you are looking for here, you are looking for evidence that verification is rigorous enough to find issues. You are looking for documentation of corrections actions, and you are looking for system improvement implemented, and you are looking for follow-up verification. The red flags that you can come across here includes verification always pass, that's not credible, or not documented findings in past year, or findings note but no action taken, or verification is done by the same person who does monitoring. Let me take you through a case study here of what happened on that one inspector discovered. A meat processing plant and meat processor plant had a perfect HACCP records. Every temperature was logged, and every deviation had a corrective actions, and everything looked compliant. The inspector then asked, show me your validation for the cooking process. The plant manager showed a letter from the equipment manufacturer from 2008 stating that oven achieves adequate lethality. The inspector asked, have you validated it with your actual products in your actual oven under your actual operating conditions? The manager said no. So the inspector requested a validation study. Okay. And the results, after they conducted the study, 15% of the product in certain oven positions were undercooked. The 2008 letter was based on different product specifications, and leading patterns had changed in 2015, and they never revalidated that. And monitoring was measuring oven air temperature, not product temperature. The outcome after they studied, they did a voluntary hold on production, and they did proper validation study, and the process was redesigned, and the new monitoring procedures was implemented, and no enforcement actions because they were being cooperative. So no enforcement action imposed by the inspector. But the cost of catching it during the inspections, it cost them around $50,000 in lost production. But if they had not caught the problem, and if they caused the cost would have been millions plus potential criminal liabilities. Here is a visual diagram, verification pyramids. First, regulatory verification. The inspector verifies the system. Secondly, you have internal verification. The company verifies its own controls and monitoring the operators watch in real time. Here, each level must verify the level below. Okay. The guidance for inspector here are the following. Don't just check if documents exist, verify they reflect reality. Ask for validation evidence, not just monitoring records. Look for evidence of learning, the system improvement over time, and distinguish between compliance theater and actual protection. Tomorrow's action for regulators. In your next inspection, ask, show me your validation study. See what happened? The response will tell you everything about the maturity of their food safety culture. All right? Now let's look at the cross sector, the learning system, building a learning culture, and we will have an example across all sectors. The universal challenge here, how do we turn findings into improvements? The following is a learning in actions, real examples from each sectors, okay? Now we have from primary production, the weak signal detected here, harvest crew reporting more frequently hand wash sanitations refill than usual. The weak response here would be good hygiene practices and no issues. But the strong response for the learning system will be the following. First, they investigated why usage increased. Secondly, they found new crew members weren't familiar with proper glove use. And also, they discovered they were washing hands instead of changing gloves appropriately. So, they revised the training program to emphasize glove protocols and they added visual guides at packing stations and they monitored glove usage versus hand wash patterns. The results here, we have improved hygiene practices and reduced cross contamination risk. All right. In a learning culture in manufacturing, the weak signal we have detected here, it was light increase in product rework due to parent issues on packing line. The weak response would have been that quality standards are high and this is normal variation. But we implemented the following response. We did the following. First, we reviewed rework data by shift and time of day, and we found patterns. Issues increased in afternoon heat. Also, we discovered adhesive performance degraded above 28 degrees Celsius, and that's because the facility temperature control was inadequate in that zone. So we installed additional cooling in packing area and we switched to heat resistant adhesive and we established temperature monitoring protocol. The result here, we eliminated rework and identified facility infrastructure gaps. Third, learning culture in distribution sector. The weak signal we detected here is that drivers reporting longer loading time at certain facilities. The weak response would have been that drivers needed to be more efficient. But a strong response with the learning culture, we did the following. First, we analyzed loading time data across all facilities. Secondly, we found delays correlated with a specific product type. Thirdly, we discovered cold chain products were being staged improperly. Then the product were warming during extended loading wait, so we redesigned staging areas workflow, and we implemented pre-cooling protocol, and we created priority loading sequence. And the results here, we have reduced temperature abuse risk and improved efficiency. Example from the retail sector. The weak signal we detected here is increased number of reduced for quick sale items in prepared food section. The weak response would have been that better to sell at discount than waste. But with the strong response and learning culture, we did the following. First, we analyzed which items were being reduced most frequently, and we found a pattern that items prepared early morning weren't selling by evening. So we also surveyed customer shopping patterns and discovered peak prepared food sales were lunch and dinner rush. So we shifted production schedule to match demand, and we implemented a smaller but more frequent batch preparation, and we trained the staff on demand forecast. The result here, we reduce the waste and we improve freshness and we increase profitability. The other example is in food service. The weak signal we detected was that the dishwasher reporting sanitizer dispenser needs refilling more often. The weak response would have been that we are busier and that's expected, but the strong response, we did the following with the learning culture. First, we checked sanitizer usage against dish volume. Then we found usage was disproportionately high. So we tested the sanitizer concentration in wash water, and we discovered dispenser was malfunctioning and over dispensing. So we replaced the dispenser mechanism and we established weekly calibration check. We created usage tracking log and we trained staff to recognize normal versus abnormal consumption rates. The results here, we ensured proper sanitization levels and prevented chemical waste. The pattern across all sectors are the following. In weak learning systems, they dismiss the weak signals and they focus on compliance, not improvement, and they blame individuals and defend current practices and they resist to change. In strong learning systems, the following happen. They investigate trends, not just violations. They ask, what is this telling us? And they look for system causes. And they share learnings and they improve proactively. Here is a visual comparative comparing for the same. Now, the following is a self-assessment for your organization. If your organization is learning, answer the following questions honestly. Do you investigate trends or only violations? Do findings lead to system change or just individual corrections? Do you share learning across your organizations? Do you reward people findings problems? Can frontliner stop production if they see a risk? If you answered no to any of these, your system is not learning yet and you can improve it. So, tomorrow's action for everyone, look at your last 5 deviations or near misses. Did any of them lead to a system change? If no, you are not learning, you are just documenting. The practical assessment tools here, your 30 days implementation roadmaps. Okay, the following is your 30 days implementation roadmap. for practical assessment tool. Use this roadmap to implement validation, verification, and learning in your operation. Starting tomorrow. Week one, assessment. This is assessment phase, the week one. Understand your current state. So from day one to day two, identify your critical controls. Okay? By listing all points where food safety depends on control measure, and for each control, ask how this being validated and document what evidence existed or doesn't exist. Then on day three to day four, review your verification activities. Okay, by asking what verification do you currently do and how often and who does it and when was the last time verification found a problem. Then in day five to day seven, analyze your learning system by reviewing the last 10 deviations or near misses. How many led to system change? How are findings shared across your organizations? And do you have a formal improvement process? Then in week two, which is for validation priority, prove your most critical control works. From day 8 to day 9, select one critical control to validate. Choose based on highest risk if it fails, and longest time since last validation, and recent change to process or equipment and regulatory requirement. Then from day 10 to day 12, design your validation study by defining what you are trying to prove, then identify worst case conditions and determine what to measure and plan how many tests is needed and assign responsibility. Then from day 13 to day 14, conduct validation, run the test under real conditions, then document everything, then analyze results, then determine if controls is adequate or need redesign. Then on week 3, which is for verification enhancement, strengthen your ongoing check by day 15 to day 16, design verification protocol for your validated control. Ask, what will you verify? How often? Who will do it? It must be independent from the operator. And what are the acceptance criteria? And what happens if verification fails? Then in day 17 to day 19, implement and test. Okay? Train verification personnel, run first verification cycle, and document results and refine protocols based on experience. Then on day 20 to day 21, expand to other controls. Apply same verification approach to 2 to 3 other critical controls. Create verification schedule and assign responsibility. Then on week 4 is for learning system to be activated. Turn your findings into improvements. Starting from day 22 to day 23, create feedback mechanisms by establishing regular reviews meeting, should be weekly or monthly, and create a simple reporting format for week signals, and define who reviews trends and set up communication channels. Then from day 24 to day 25, develop response protocols by defining what triggers and investigations, create root cause analysis templates, and establish improvement approval process, and assign responsibility for follow-up. Then from day 26 to day 28, train your team. Explain validation versus verification versus monitoring. Train on new protocols. Emphasize improvement. Emphasize importance of reporting problems and celebrate findings issues, not hiding them. And from day 29 to 30, review and plan next step by asking what worked well, what needs adjustment, what's the next control to validate, and schedule next review cycle. Now, the following are sector specific priorities. Primary production start with water quality validation. For manufacturing, start with thermal process validation. For distribution, start with cold chain validation. For retail, you can start with display case verification. And for food service, you can start with cooking process validation. And for regulatory, start by requesting validation evidence in the next inspection. Quick wins here that you can achieve in 30 days. You can achieve one critical control validated with documented evidence, and also verification protocol could be established and running, and team could be trained on the difference between validation, verification, and monitoring, and first learning cycle could be completed from finding to investigation to improvement, and foundations could be built for continuous improvement. Those are quick wins you can implement in 30 days. The resources you will need: you need minimal investment, such as calibrated thermometers or test equipment, and data loggers for temperature and time studies, and documentation, temperature, and staff time. Approximately, you need around 40 hours total across 30 days. The expected cost is ranging between $1,000 to $5,000 depending on sector and scale, and the expected benefit is prevention of incidents that is worth hundreds to thousands of times the investment. Visual progress tracking: use this one. First week, assessment complete. Week 2, validation complete. Week 3, verification complete. And week 4, learning complete. You can use this to track your progress. So the tomorrow's first step: print this roadmap, ask me to send it to you, or you can design one like this and print it. Schedule 2 hours this week to complete the week 1 assessment and assign someone to lead it. Okay? And begin. Now let's look at the global best practices summary. World-class standards, what excellence look like. These practices represents the global standards for validation, verification, and learning. Use them as your benchmark. The validation best practices, global standards. One, evidence-based decision making look like following: all critical controls supported by documented validation studies, validation conducted under worst case conditions, independent verifications of validation data, and regular re-validation schedule around annually as a minimum. Example, a New Zealand dairy industry requires validation studies for all thermal processes with independent review by qualified process authorities. Now, number 2, you have worst case testing protocols as following: identify all variables that could affect controls, test at extremes of each variable, and document safety margins and built in buffer for normal variation is world-class practice. Example, European meat processors validate cooking processes at maximum load and minimum temperature and fastest line speed and thickest product simultaneously as the best practice for worst case testing protocol. Third, you have validation documentation standards. The best practice is to you must include date and personnel involved, equipment specifications and calibration, product specifications, test methodology, raw data, not just summaries, statistical analysis, and conclusions and recommendations and approval signatures. Example here, Australian food safety standards require validation reports to be validated, to be available for regulatory review and updated within 30 days of any process change. Now let's look at the verification best practices global standards. One, you have independence principles, looks like following. Verification performed by different person than the monitoring. Verification is scheduled independently of production pressure. Verification results reported to management, not just operators. And third-party verifications for highest risk processes. Example, Japanese food manufacturers employ dedicated QA teams separate from production with direct reporting to senior management. Second, frequency based on risk. Best practices. You have high risk with daily verification, ready to eat products with no further skills, those are the high risk, they need daily verification, and products for vulnerable populations and processes with narrow safety margins. The medium risk that need weekly verifications include products with subsequent kill steps, stable processes with good history, and multiple barriers in place. The low risk that could be validated monthly include self-stable products, processes with wide safety margins, and robust historical performance. Example, UK retailers require daily verification of temperature controls for fresh ready-to-eat products with documented evidence reviewed weekly by technical managers. Three, for best practices, we have verification that actually finds problems. Look like the following. They use calibrated and independent instruments, test actual products, not just equipment, verify during worst conditions, such as busy periods and hot weathers, and include unannounced checks and track verification findings as KPIs. Example, you have Scandinavian food companies track verification effectiveness as a metrics. Percentage of verification activities that identify issues requiring corrective actions, and the target they have 5 to 10%. If 0%, verification is too weak. If above 20%, process is unstable. Now let's look at the learning system best practices global standards. One, you have weak signal detections best practices. Look as the following. Trend analysis of all monitoring data, regular review of near misses, customer complaints analysis, supplier performance tracking, and environmental monitoring trends. Example, Leading US food companies use statistical process controls (SPC) to detect trends before limits are exceeded, triggering investigations at two standards deviations and not just at critical limits. Secondly, root cause analysis culture, best practices, global standards look like following. Every deviation triggers investigation. 5 whys or similar methodologies are required. Is focused on system cases, not individual blames, and corrective actions address root causes, not symptoms, and effectiveness of corrective actions are verified. Example, Dutch food manufacturers use a structured root cause analysis for all deviations with management review required before closing investigations. 3, you have knowledge sharing system, best practices globally, look like following. Internal incidents database accessible to all relevant staff, regular cross-functional review meetings, industry participation in information sharing networks, lesson learned communicated across all sites, and training updated based on real incidents. Example here, Canadian food industry participates in confidential incident reporting systems where companies share learning anonymously, preventing others from repeating the same mistakes. Then you have continuous improvement metrics, best practices, global standards look like following. The track report, number of validation completed versus planned, verification findings and closure rates, time from detection to corrective actions, repeat deviations, and should trend to zero, and system improvement implemented per year. Example, global food companies include food safety improvements metrics in executive scorecard with targets for proactive improvements and not just reactive response. Now let's look at regulator alignment with global standards. The best in class organizations that do the following. They exceed minimum regulatory requirements, engage proactively with regulators, share validation and verification data transparently, participate in industry standard developments, and maintain audit-ready documentation at all times. Example here, Singapore food companies maintain digital food safety management systems with real-time data access for regulators, demonstrating transparency and building trust. Now let's look at cultural indicators of excellence. Okay, these are cultural indicators of the excellence. You know you have achieved world-class structure when the following happen. Frontliner staff can explain the difference between validation, verification, and monitoring. Finding problems is celebrated, not punished. Verifications regularly identifies opportunities for improvements. Deviations lead to system change, not just individual retraining. And food safety performance improves years over year. And regulatory inspections finds minimum issues. And industry peers seeks to learn from your practices. The following is a visual maturity model, and it shows progression ladder. All right. You have level 1, reactive, the response to incidents after they occur. Level 2, compliant, the meet minimum regulatory requirements. Level 3, proactive, they validate and verify systematically. And level 4, predictive, they detect and prevent through weak signals. And level 5, world class, they have continuous learning and industry leadership. So, where is your organization today? And where do you want to be in 12 months? So, tomorrow's action: compare your current practices to the global standards, identify your biggest gap, make that your next improvement priority. Now, let's look at avoiding the traps here. Okay, what retails, uh, what derails most organizations? Let's see what derails most organizations. Learning from others' mistakes. These are the most common failures in validation, verification, and learning. So let's see and how to avoid them. First, validation pitfalls. First pitfalls: validation by authority. The mistakes here: accepting equipment manufacturers' claim without independent testing. Why it fails? Manufacturers test under ideal conditions, not your real world operations. To fix this, always validate with your actual products, your actual equipment, and your actual operating conditions. Real example here: bakery accepted manufacturers' claim of uniform heating. Their validation study reveals 25 degrees Celsius temperature variation across the oven. They adjusted the loading patterns and revalidated. Second pitfalls is one-time validation. The mistake validations here, the mistake here, validations validating once and never again. Okay, one-time validation is a pitfall to avoid. So why it fails? Equipment age and processes change and product also evolve. Okay. To fix this, you need to revalidate annually and after any significant change. Real world example here: a juice processor validated their pasteurization in 2010, and by 2008, the heat exchanger has scaled built up, reducing heat transfer. The product was under pasteurized for 2 years before the discovery. The third pitfall to avoid is the best case validation. The mistake here: testing under ideal conditions with a small product and a slow speed and empty equipment. Why it fails here? Because real production operates under stress, not ideal conditions. So to fix this, you need to validate under worst case conditions deliberately. Real examples here: a meat plant validated cooking with the small chicken breasts at a slow line speed. So during busy periods with large breasts and fast speed, the product was undercooked and outbreak resulted, as we demonstrated earlier. Now let's look at verification pitfalls to avoid. Pitfall 4: verification theater is a pitfall to avoid. So the mistakes here is checking things that don't matter or checking incorrectly. It fails because it creates false confidence without actual protection. And to fix this, you need to verify what actually affects food safety using proper methods. Real example here: a restaurant verified refrigeration by reading the display thermometers. The displayed thermometers measures the air. The actual food temperature was 10 degrees Celsius higher, and the food poisoning outbreak occurred as a result. The fifth pitfall to avoid is the same person syndrome. The mistake here: operator monitors, then verifies their own work That's the same person syndrome pitfall to avoid. It fails because no independent checks and there is a conflict of interest. So to fix this, you need verification. Your verification must be independent from monitoring. Real world example, you have a production supervisor, both monitored temperature and verified the monitoring records. But when the pressure to meet production targets, both monitoring and verifications become unreliable. The sixth pitfall to avoid is the perfect records paradox. The mistakes here, verification that never finds problems. It fails because if verification never finds issues, it's not rigorous enough. So, in order to fix it, your verification should occasionally identify opportunities for improvement. Real world example here, you have an inspector noticed a plant had perfect verification records for 3 years and never a single finding. Investigation later on revealed that verification was being done from the office, not on the floor, and it was completely fabricated. Now let's look at learning system pitfalls here to avoid. You have pitfall number 7 is a blame culture. The mistake here punishing people who report the problems. It fails because problems get hidden instead of solved. And in order to fix this, you need to reward findings and report issues. Investigate systems and not people. The real example here, a food service company fired a cook who reported undercooked chicken. Other cooks stopped reporting. And 6 months later, a major outbreak occurred because problems were hidden. The eighth pitfall is corrective actions treadmill. The mistake here is fixing symptoms repeatedly without addressing root causes. It fails because the same problems occur endlessly. And to fix this, you need to use root cause analysis, fix systems, and not just incidences. The real example here, plant had recurring temperature deviation. They retrained the operator 6 times. Root causes analysis reveals the refrigeration units was undersized, and then they replaced the unit and eliminated the problem. The pitfall number 9 to avoid is data hoarding. Data hoarding mistakes is collecting data but never analyzing it. It fails because trends and patterns go unnoticed. To fix this, you need to conduct a regular data review meeting with trend analysis. Example here, a distributor collected temperature data from 50 trucks for 2 years, but never analyzed it. When they finally reviewed the data, they discovered 12 trucks had chronic temperature controls issue and thousands of dollars in product had been at risk. Pitfalls number 10 is learning. The mistake here, lessons learned in one area is not shared with others. Why it fails? Because some mistakes repeated across different locations and departments. For example, a formal knowledge sharing system. That's how you fix it. Example, a restaurant chain had a food safety incident at one location. Investigation revealed the same issue existed at 40 other locations, but no one had shared the information. All 40 locations had to implement emergency corrections. Now let's look at organizational pitfalls to avoid. We have pitfall number 11 is compliance over safety. The mistake is focusing on passing audits rather than protecting consumers. It fails because paperwork look good but actual protection is weak. In order to fix this mistake, you need to measure actual food safety outcomes, not just documentation completeness. Example here, a facility had beautiful HACCP documentation and passed all the audits, but they had never actually validated their critical controls. When tested, 3 out of 5 controls were inadequate. The 12th pitfall to avoid is resources starvation. The mistake here, expecting world class food safety with minimum investment, doesn't work. It fails because validation and verification requires time, they require equipment, and they require expenses and expertise. To fix this, you need to budget appropriately for food safety as a business priority. Example here, a small processor wanted to validate their process but wouldn't pay for data loggers or lab testing. They guessed at what critical limits regulatory inspections found the process inadequate and shut them down. So, how to avoid these traps? Prevention checklist is to avoid. This is the following is a prevention checklist to avoid all these traps. One, validate independently, not by authority. Secondly, revalidate regularly and after changing. Thirdly, test the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario. Fourth, verify what matters using proper methods. Fifth, ensure verification independently. Six, expect verifications to find issues occasionally. Seven, reward problems reporting. 8. Fix root causes, not symptoms. 9. Analyze data regularly. 10. Share learnings across organizations. 11. Prioritize food safety over compliance approach. And 12. Investigate or invest adequately in food safety. The following are visual warnings that you can detect and avoid also. You can have a red flag dashboard actually to show the following. No validation studies on file, red flag. Validation older than 3 years, that's a red flag. Verification never finds problem, red flag. Same person monitoring and verifies, red flag. Recording deviations is a red flag. Not trend analysis is a red flag. And blaming culture is a red flag. And perfect records, too perfect, is a red flag. So if you see any of these, investigate immediately and implement corrective actions. So tomorrow, accordingly, review your system against these 12 points, 12 pitfalls. Which one applies to you? Pick the most dangerous one and fix it this month, okay? Now let's go through the final self-assessment here. Where do you stand and complete the assessment tools of the following, okay? Use this comprehensive assessment to evaluate your organization's maturity in validation, verification, and learning. Be brutally honest because this is for you and for your benefits and not for the show, okay? Validation maturity assessment. Score each statement from 0, that means it's not true. 1, it means partially true. 2 means mostly true. And 3 means completely true. First, all critical control points have documented validation studies. Score from 0 to 3. Validation studies were conducted under worst case conditions. Score from 0 to 3. Validations includes actual data, not just manufacturing claims. Score 0 to 3. We revalidate annually or after significant change. Score here too, 0 to 3. Validation studies are reviewed and approved by qualified personnel. Score 0 to 3. We have documented safety margins built into our critical limits. 0 to 3. Validation documentations include raw data, not just summaries. 0 to 3. We can produce validation evidence for any critical control point within 5 minutes. 0 to 3. Okay, now you can have your validation score. How many did you score out of 24? An interpretation of the following for your score. From 20 to 24, that means you have world-class validation program. From 15 to 19, you have a strong foundation with minor gaps to address. From 10 to 14, you have significant improvements that needed. And from 0 to 9, you have critical deficiencies and you need immediate action. Now let's look at the verification maturity assessment. Score each statement from 0 equals to not true, 1 equals to partially true, 2 equals to mostly true, and 3 equals to completely true. 1. Verification is performed by personnel independent from monitoring. Second, verification frequency is based on risk assessment. Third, we use calibrated independent instruments for verification. Fourth, verification tests actual products, not just equipment. Fifth, verification is conducted during worst case conditions, such as busy periods. Six, our verification activities regularly identify opportunity for improvement. Seven, all verification findings are documented and tracked to closure. Eight, verification results are reviewed by management regularly. Now you can score your verification score out of 24. How many did you score? And the interpretation of the score is the following. If you score from 20 to 24, that means you have excellent verification system. If you score from 15 to 19, that means you have good practices with room for enhancement. If you score from 10 to 14, that means verification exists but lack rigor. And if you score from 0 to 9, your verification is inadequate or ineffective. The following is a learning system maturity assessment, the organizational learning system maturity assessment. Score each statement. 0 equals to not true, 1 equals to partially true, 2 equals to mostly true, and 3 equals to completely true. First statement, we analyze trends in monitoring data, not just individual violations. Second statement, near misses and weak signals trigger investigation. Third, we use structured root cause analysis for all deviations. Fourth, corrective actions address system causes, not just symptoms. Fifth, findings from one area are shared across the organizations. Six, we track and trend food safety performance metrics. Seven, employees are rewarded for identifying and reporting problems. Eight, our food safety system has demonstrably improved over the past year. Now you can score your organizational learning. How many did you score out of 24? And you can interpret as the following. If you score between 20 to 24, that means you have advanced learning organization. If you score between 15 and 19, that means you have good learning culture developing, which is developing. And if you score from 10 to 14, that means your learning is reactive and not proactive. And if you score between 0 and 9, that means your organization is not learning from the experience. The following is overall maturity score. The total score, how many did you score totally out of the 72? And the following is the overall interpretation from the 72, your score out of 72. If you score between 60 and 72, your organization is a world class. You are among the global leaders in food safety management. Your, your challenge is to maintain excellence and share your practices with industry. The next step for your organization here: first, document your best practices. Secondly, monitor other organizations. Thirdly, participate in industry standards development. And fourth, continue to innovate and improve. If you score between 45 and 95 and between 45 and 59, you have a strong you are a strong performer organizations. You have a solid food safety system with some gaps to address. You are above average but not yet world class. The next step for you: first, identify your lowest scoring area. Secondly, implement improvements from this module. Third, benchmark against global best practices. And fifth and fourth, set targets to reach above 60 score within 12 months. If you score between 30 and 44, you have a developing organization. You have basic system in place, but significant weaknesses exist. You are at risk of incidents. Your next steps include: prioritize validation of critical controls. Secondly, strengthen verification independence and rigor. Third, implement a structured learning process. Fourth, allocate resources to food safety improvements. And fifth, consider external expertise and consultation. If you score between 0 and 29, your organization is at critical risk. Your food safety system has fundamental deficiencies. You are at risk of causing harm and facing regulatory actions. Your next steps: first, immediately conduct risk assessment of all operations. Second, engage qualified food safety consultant. Third, develop comprehensive improvement plans. Fourth, allocate emergency resources. Fifth, consider voluntary production hold until system validates. And sixth, notify senior leadership and board of directors. The following is a sector-specific benchmark. Compare your score to typical performance in your sector. For primary production sector, the typical range is between 35 and 45, and the best in class is between 55 and 65 score. For manufacturing sector, the typical score range is between 45 and 55, but the best in class is between 60 and 75. For distribution sector, the typical range score is between 30 to 40, but the best in class is between 50 and 60. For retail sector, typical score is 25 to 35, and the best in class is between 45 and 55. For food service sector, typical score is ranging between 20 to 30, but the best in class score is between 40 50. Regulatory, typical range 50 to 60, and the best in class between 60 to 72. Where do you stand in your score? The following are this is an actual uh, action planning template. Based on your assessment, you can complete this plan. You can design a template like this and you can complete it. Start one, my overall score, you put it there, and my weakest area, you take validation or verification or learning, and my lowest scoring statement. You write it down, and then 4, this represents my highest risk because, and you write down. 5th, I will address this by, and you have to be specific with the action here. You write it down. 6th, person responsible, you write them down, and completion date, you write it down. 8, resources needed, you write them down. And 9, success will be measured by, and you write it down. Then I will reassess my score in date, and you write it down. Typically, when do you want to reassess? The following is a commitment assessment for you to implement the improvement. You write your name down, you commit to improve our food safety system based on this assessment. I will share this assessment with senior leadership, allocate resources to address identified gaps, implement the 30 days roadmap from this module, reassess our maturity in 6 months, and hold myself accountable for measurable improvement. And you sign it with date. So tomorrow's action, complete this assessment, share it with your leadership team, and schedule a meeting to discuss the results and commit to improvement. Let's look at the closing reflection here. When weaknesses is detected, does your system change or explain it away? This is the defining characteristic of learning system. Weak systems explain deviations away by saying, that's just a one-time thing, the operator made a mistake, it's still within acceptable range. But the strong system investigate deviation as signals by doing the following. What conditions allow this to occur? What does this reveal about our assumptions? And what needs to change to prevent recurrence? The difference is not technical, it is cultural and structural. It requires leaders who value learning over comfort and systems designed to make the change possible. So, what happened next? Two paths diverge here. You have organizations that act by actively applying the insights from this module. Your organizations will take off on a journey of continuous improvement by including proactive risk identification and mitigation, a culture of accountability and transparent communication, enhanced brand reputation and steady consumer trust, and significantly reduce incident, waste, and financial losses, and empower the team dedicated to excellence. For organizations that don't act, they ignore this. Ignoring weak signals and avoiding necessary change can lead to a dangerous future, including recurring issues and escalating operational risks, erosion of stakeholders' trust and severe reputational damage, increased regulatory scrutiny, fines, and potential legal actions, and stagnant or declining safety performance, putting consumers at risk, and a workforce designated and restaurants to change. A workforce disengaged and a resistance to change. The metrics of success, the next 9 days, gauge your progress and cement your commitment by doing the following. Completion of all the full self-assessment by all relevant stakeholders, identification and documentation of your top 3 improvement priorities, assignment of clear ownership and initial actions for each priority, Communication plan shared with senior leadership regarding assessment, results, and commitment to improvement. A scheduled follow up meeting with 90 days to review initial progress and adjust plans. Is your legacy when the next person takes your role, when you move up the ladder, or when you move to other opportunity, what food safety culture will they inherit? Will it be one built on proactive learning and resilience, or one grappling with past unaddressed weaknesses? The future of your food safety system isn't predetermined yet. It is forged by the decisions you make today. Act with courage, okay? Commit to learning and lead the way to a safer tomorrow. The time for change is now. Now, the module 9 summary and action plans. What you have learned and what to do next. Uh, what you now know, just give me a second here. So, what you know now, all right, you started this module with three uncomfortable questions, right? Now you can answer them with confidence. The first question you remember, can you prove your controls work? The answer now is yes, through proper validation with documentation evident. Question two was, when did verification last find something wrong? The answer now uh, you now know the effective verification should find issues regularly. That's how you know it's working. The third question was, did your system change when your operation changed? The answer now, you know now, you have a revalidation protocols and learning system to keep your controls current. The three pillars you have mastered are the following. The first pillar is validation, which prove it works. That means test under worst conditions, documents with actual data, revalidate when things change, and build in safety margins. Second pillar is verification, prove it's still working, which means independent checking, regular schedule based on risk, use calibration instruments, test actual products, not just equipment, and expect to find opportunities for improvement. Third pillar is learning. Detect and improve. Analyze trend, not just violations. Investigate weak signals. Fix systems, not just people. Share learning across organization and verify improvements work. What makes this module different now? You didn't just learn the concept, you received the following. You receive step-by-step implementation protocols. You receive real examples from every sector, and you receive before and after comparison between right versus wrong. Also, you received sector specific guidance, including farm, factories, trucks, store, and restaurants. And you receive self assessment tools. You receive 30 days implementation roadmaps. You received global best practices, and you receive communication pitfalls to avoid. And also, you receive complete maturity assessment. So everything you need to implement world-class food safety starting tomorrow, you have received already, right? So your implementation priority are the following. Based on this module, here is your action sequence. Week 1, assessment. Complete self-assessment. Score yourself honestly and identify your weakest area. Is it validation? Is it verification? Or is it learning? And select one critical control to start with. That's week 1, assessment. In week 2, validation. Gather or create validation evidence of your selected control. If no validation exists, design and conduct validation study. Document results properly. Then in week 3, for verification, establish independent verification protocol. Assign responsibility, All right, that must be different from operator. Conduct the first verification and document the finding. And in week 4, which is for learning, set up monthly data review meeting, analyze trends from monitoring and verification, identify one system improvement and implement and verify effectiveness. Months 2 to 3, you can expand. From months 2 to 3, you can apply the same process to the next 2 to 3 critical controls. You can build verification schedule and you will establish feedback loops, procedures, and train your team. And from months 4 to 6, you can optimize. You can review all critical controls, with strengthen weak areas, share learnings across organizations, and prepare for revalidation cycle. And from month 7 to month 12, you maintain verification schedule, you conduct annual revalidations, you continue learning and improving, and you benchmark against global best practices. The difference you will see are the following. Organizations that implement this module they report the following. Problems detected earlier before they become incidents. Fewer deviations over time. Systems improved and higher confidence in food safety based on evidence, not hope, and better audit results. They can prove controls work and reduce risk of recall and outbreaks, and a stronger food safety culture, learning, not blames. Oh, sorry. Actually, my mic here, there is a noise in the background and it just went off. Let me go back to where we were. Where were we? Where were we? Where were we? All right, we were here. We were here. All right, sorry. Let's go through it again. The difference you will see organizations that implement these modules reports the following. The problems are detected earlier before they become incidents, fewer deviations over time, system improvement, and higher confidence in food safety based on evidence, not hope anymore, and better audit results can prove the control work and reduce risk of recalls and outbreaks, and stronger food safety cultures, learning, not blaming, and competitive advantage. Customers trust validated systems, right? The commitment required now, be honest with yourself. And this is not a one time project, it is a permanent change in how you operate. Validation, verification, and learning are not optional are not optional extra. They are the foundations of food safety. All right. Validation, verification, and learning are not optional extras. They are the foundation of food safety. You will need to do the following. You'll need time, approximately like 40 to 80 hours in the first 90 days of implementation, and you need resources. You need calibrated equipment and testing and documentation, and you need leadership support, permissions to find and fix problems, and you need cultural shift. You need to start celebrating findings, issues. You need to foster that culture and not hiding them. And you will meet resistance. So system will take time to mature and you need to be patient with it. But the alternative, The operating without proof, without verification, and without learning is not acceptable at all. The following is your personal action plan. Complete this now. First is that my current maturity score. Put your score there out of the 75 scoring exercise. And my weakest area, identify that. Is it validation, verification, or learning, or all? And my first critical control to address, write that down. My biggest gap, write it down. And my first action this week, write it down as per the exercise. And personal the person responsible for that action, write it down. And completion date, write it down. Write down also how will measure success and who will share who will share this with, write it down. And my 90 days goal, and you write it down. The resources you have, everything in this module is yours to use, okay? You have 30 days implementation roadmap in the slide of practical assessment tools. And you have sector specific examples in the slide of primary production through regulatory. And you have global best practices in the slide of world class standards. And you have common pitfalls guides to avoid in slides of avoiding the traps. And you have complete self assessment in the slides of the final self assessment. And also, you have step by step protocols throughout the module that you can implement. The final question, 6 months from now, will you be able to say, I can prove my food safety system is protecting people? If you implement what you have learned in this module, the answer will be yes. Not because you believe it, and not because you are busy, and not because you have procedures, but because you have evidence now. You have evidence from validations, evidence from verifications, and evidence from continuous learning. That is the difference between hope and protection, between compliance and safety, and between good intentions and actual results. So, what happened next? Module 10 will show you how PADEX HACCP provides the universal language and framework for implementing everything you have learned here. So before you move forward, complete your action plan above, schedule your first implementation step, and commit to change. And because knowledge without action is just information, and information doesn't protect people, all right? So tomorrow morning, when you arrive at work tomorrow, you will do one thing differently. You will ask about one critical control. Can we prove this work? And if the answer is anything other than yes, here is the validation study with data, you will know exactly what to do. And because you have completed Module 9, you are ready to transform your food safety system from belief to proof. All right, let's begin. Now, let me give you a quick reference guide. All right, here is a one-page reference, validation, verification, and learning. Print this or ask me in the comment section and I will send it to you and keep it in your desk. You can design this also. It's simple and use it daily. Okay. The three functions at a glance here. First, validation. Does it work? Prove your control works before you trust it. When? Before implementation and after change. Who? Technical authority and experts can do it. And how? To test under worst case condition. The evidence needed must be documented data and analysis, and frequency should be initial before the implementations, then annually. Secondly, you have monitoring. Is it working now? Watch your controls in real time. When should you do that? Continuous during operations. Who should do it? Production operator. And how? By checking the critical parameters. And evidence you need is monitoring log, and frequency is hourly and continuous. Thirdly, you have verification. Is it still working? That's the answer there. You need the answer to verify. Independent check that monitoring is accurate. When should you conduct verifications? Should be scheduled intervals. And who should do it? QA or supervisors, not the operator who is monitoring. And how? It must be with independent calibrated instruments. The evidence you need here, you need verification records and the frequency, weekly, monthly, based on risk. Okay. And then you have learning. How can we improve, detect trends, and improve systems? When to learn? Regular review meetings. Who? Management and technical team. How? You have to analyze data and investigate patterns. And the evidence is improvement actions. This should be done monthly as a frequency. The critical rule here for separation, these functions must be done by different people. Keep this in your mind. The operator does the monitoring, supervisor and QA does the verification, technical experts does the validation, and management teams do the learning, and never allow the same person to do all functions. All right? This is a quick decision tree also that you can design and keep. The question here, what do I need to do? Use this decision tree. Schedule review, verify or analyze. Operating now, monitor continuously. Anything change, revalidate as needed. New controls, validate before use, right? You can design one simple like this, or I can send you this one also. The red flags here for immediate actions needed. If no validation documented existed, if validation is older than 3 years, if the same person is monitoring and verifies, if verifications never finds problems, and if change made without revalidation, and if deviations repeat without system change, and if trend analysis conducted, not conducted, and if perfect records, two perfects, that's not real. If you see any of these, you need to investigate immediately. All right? Now, here are the 4 questions for daily checklist. For each critical control, ask for validation. Can we prove it works? If yes, with documented data. If no, validate now. Daily checklist. Monitoring. Are we watching? If yes, operators check regularly with records. If no, start the monitoring. You have for verification. Daily. Is someone checking independently? If yes, who? QA or supervisor verifying? If no, you can establish the verification. Learning. Are we analyzing trends? If yes, with monthly review conducted, documented, and lesson learned apply? If no, start review meetings. So when to revalidate? Revalidate immediately if equipment replaced or repaired, supplier change, product formulation change, process parameters change, capacity increased, facility modified, or more than 1 year since the last validation. The verification requirement guides. In high risk, for validation, you need to do it daily. For verification, you need to do it daily. In high risk, such as ready to meet products, or when you don't have further uh, daily steps, or when the product is for vulnerable populations, such as infant, elderly, or uh, immune compromise. And then for the medium risk, you can do weekly verifications for such as products with subsequent kill steps and stable processes and multiple barriers. And for the low risk, you can do monthly verifications, such as in shelf stable products or wide safety margins or robust history. The weak signals to watch. These patterns require investigations trending upward, even if it's within the limits you need to investigate. Increasing frequency of alarm, you need to investigate. More rejection than normal, you need to investigate. Customer complaints emerging, you need to start the investigation. Near misses occurring, and equipment performance declining, or staff reporting concerns, those patterns requires investigation. The action needed is to investigate before the limit exceeds. Okay. The following is the learning cycle. You start by detecting the problem. You investigate the root cause using the 5 why or similar, and you design the system improvement, and you implement the change. Then you verify the effectiveness. Then you share the learning, and then you return to monitoring cycle. The common mistakes to avoid: trusting manufacturer's claim without testing, validations once and never again, testing under ideal conditions only, same person monitoring and verifying, verifications that never finds issues, blaming people instead of fixing systems, collecting data but never analyzing it, and not sharing learning across organizations. Your first steps in week one: pick one critical control and ask, can we prove it work, and gather validation evidence. In week two, establish monitoring protocols and assign operators responsibility and start the logging data. In week three, set up verification schedule, assign independent verifier, and conduct first verification. And in week four, review all data collected and look for trends and identify one improvement. For emergency contacts, when you need help, you need technical experts for validation questions, and you can contact QA manager for verification setup, and you should contact equipment supplier for specifications, and you should contact regulatory authority for compliance, and you can contact industry associations for best practices, and you should contact food safety consultants for complex issues. Those are your emergency contacts. And your success metrics: you are succeeding when all critical controls have validation evidence, and when monitoring happens consistently, and when verification finds issue occasionally by 5 to 10%, and when deviations decrease over time, and when system improvement implemented regularly, and when team can explain the three functions, and when audit finds minimal issues, and when confidence based on evidence and not hope, you will know you are succeeding. And also remember this: a system that stops learning eventually stops protecting. All right? Always remember this, because validation proves it worked, monitoring watch it work, verification confirm it's still working, and learning makes it work better. All for all the time and forever. All right? Always remember that. That's food safety excellence. Print this page, ask me to send it to you, or design one like it, and keep it visible, use it daily, share it with your teams. And Module 9 is complete. All right? In Module 10, you will have learning alliance system internally. You will have Codex HACCP as a universal language. That's what we will have in Module 10. We have explored how systems learn and adapt internally now. Module 10 will show how Codex HACCP provides the shared logic and enable systems to communicate and align externally, and that creating universal language of food safety that works across borders, cultures, and contexts. Thank you and see you in Module 10.